Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Nexus. Today we're joined by Anthony Scaramucci, aka the Mooch. Now you'll remember he was Donald Trump's communications director in 2017 for 10 short but very memorable days.
I love the president, and I'm very, very loyal to the president, and I love the mission that the president has.
Not anymore. Things have changed. After a very nasty spat on Twitter, the Mooch is now actively working to wreck Donald Trump's chances of winning the election in November.
Well, Anthony was a guy who worked for me, who really didn't have a clue. He worked for 11 days, and I'm not a fan of Anthony. I haven't been for a long time.
Now, in a moment, we'll ask the Mooch why he turned on the president and what he's doing to ensure his rival, Joe Biden, wins in November. But first, this quick reminder of those tumultuous days when Anthony Scaramucci spoke for the President of the United States.
Breaking news from the President. President Trump officially picks Anthony Scaramucci, and he's going to be the communications director at the White House.
The Mooch!
The Mooch.
The Mooch! Hey!
Anthony Scaramucci is going to be a very different and unconventional comms director in a very unconventional White House.
I love the president, and I'm very, very loyal to the president, and I love the mission that the president has. I think he's got some of the best political instincts in the world, and perhaps in history. I think we've got to just radio signal the direction very, very clearly. If you want to eat an elephant, you got to eat it one bite at a time. Thank you.
Anthony Scaramucci communicates the way the president does. He uses big gestures, simple language, and brings a business perspective to how Washington should work.
One of the things I cannot stand about this town is the backstabbing that goes on here, okay? Where I grew up, in the neighborhood I'm from, we're front stabbers. We'd like to tell you exactly where we're from and what we're doing.
This morning, a White House at war with itself. New Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci unleashing a profane attack against Chief of Staff Reince Priebus.
And Reince is a paranoid schizophrenic, paranoiac. What he's going to do is, maybe Bill Shine's coming. Let me leak the thing and see if I can block these people the way I blocked Scaramucci for 6 months.
He says almost homophobic things about Steve Bannon. I mean, these things are appalling, and I can't imagine that that is constructive at all in working towards the fulfillment of President Trump's agenda.
What do you think the president does about it?
Well, he's got something big to deal with.
News from the White House. ABC News has learned that Anthony Scaramucci, the White House communications director who just started 10 days ago, is now leaving. Perhaps the writing was on the wall after that tirade.
Wait, what? Scaramucci out, but he just got here.
You don't survive long, especially in this White House, when you are the focus of more attention than the president.
10 days on the job. That makes Anthony Scaramucci the shortest tenured communications director in the history of the White House.
I made a mistake. I'm accountable for the mistake. I paid the consequences of that mistake. And, I was honorably dismissed, and I took it.
Okay, then, let's hear from the man himself, Anthony Scaramucci. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us here on the Nexus. Really appreciate it.
It's good to be here. You gypped me out of 1 day, though. I was there for 11 days. I mean, that's like 9.1% of my federal career. So
that was going to be my opening question. That was going to be my opening question.
Even the president, when he's tweeting at me, acknowledges that it was 11. But that's
fine. He does say 11 days. Others say 10. I don't get it. How do you count it from the 21st to the 31st? Anyway, let's put that to one side. Look, when somebody lasts 10 or 11 days in a job, usually everyone forgets all about them, but not the Mooch, right? Everyone remembers you, even around the world. Why do you think that is?
Listen, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was a pretty spectacular blow-up, but I think what was important for me is that I didn't lose my voice in the debate. When I got fired about a week later, the president called me and he asked me how I was doing. I said, hey, relax. You just made me as famous as Melania and Ivanka, and I didn't have to sleep with you or be your daughter. So I was totally fine with it. And so when Stephen Colbert called me for the late night comedian, I accepted his invitation. And you may remember this if you see my interviews on the internet. I was supporting the president for 2 years after my firing. I was trying to be a loyal Republican, which is why I have a big understanding for these people who are still loyal to the president. I just think they're making a mistake at this point, given the activity of the president.
Okay. Well, I don't think it was just your firing that made you so memorable. It was also because you were an outsider. You were a Wall Street guy in Washington. You described yourself as someone who doesn't go around stabbing people in the back like the politicians. You were a front stabber, which is an expression I'd never heard of until you said it. But now you're...
Shouldn't people be that way, though? Don't
They
you think
should
people
be. I just
like
didn't
that?
know there was an expression for it. But now you're siding with a man who's been in politics for 47 years, the ultimate Washington insider. What's changed? Have you changed?
Oh, I have changed. No, there's no question about that. It's interesting. Somebody said to me, well, you're disavowing President Trump. He's the same guy that he was in 2015. What's changed? Me. I've changed. I think I'm more psychologically minded. I'm more empathetic. I think the experience that I went through over the last 3 years has made me realize that you don't want to overly equivocate your principles, your moral values. And I think that your patriotism is frankly more important than partisanship. So yes, I have changed. And by the way, you mentioned the 47 years. The country did pretty amazing over the last 47 years. You know, we helped to bring down the Berlin Wall. We helped to create the advent of the communications age and all these great internet companies. We've done pretty well. I mean, are there pockets of things that we need to improve in our country? Yes. But this nonsense of saying that he's been in government for 47 years, like he didn't do anything, you know, the country's done pretty well.
Well, let's pick up on that, okay? So a few days ago, Trump tweets, in 47 years, Joe did none of the things of which he now speaks. He will never change, just words. You responded, it's an amazing country to live in and be a part of those last 47 years, except when you started ruining everything. Now, I have to ask you, Anthony, are you serious? It was an amazing country for everyone for those 47 years?
Now listen, you know, I think my tweet, we're sort of microanalyzing it. Was it an amazing country? By and large, for most everyone, yes. Do we have racial tension in our country? Do we have an income gap in our country? We do. But let's go back 47 years ago. My father was a blue-collar worker, not college educated, high school graduate, 42 years operating a crane here on Long Island in suburbia, and he lived a middle-class lifestyle. There were wages in the United States for labor that allowed people like me to live the arc of the American dream. And so did everybody experience that?
Okay.
No. I think one of the tragedies that's gone on is there's been some policies and some outsourcing that have hurt that. But by and large, it's been a very successful country, arguably one of the most successful in world history.
All right. Now, you're saying, except in your latter part of your tweet, except when you started ruining everything, okay? Now, to say that America's troubles on this magnitude began with President Trump seems rather strange. I mean, the 47-year period you're referring to goes back to when Nixon was in charge. And, you know, let me give you a quick summary of what's happened between 72 and now. You had Nixon removed from office. You had a Vietnam War raging, Rodney King riots in 92. You had what some people call an illegal war in Iraq, the Battle of Mogadishu, where hundreds of Somalis may have been killed. I mean, there's always been trouble in the United States, Anthony.
Well, I think there's been trouble, you know, in the world, frankly. I mean, it's not just the United States. I mean, listen, on a relative basis, when you look at the United States and you look at the American experiment over the 47 years or the 244 years, it has presented a land of opportunity for most people, certainly for my family and for many families. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. If you want to read a book that discusses the stuff that you're discussing, just read These Truths by Jill Lepore. The professor points out a lot of the inconsistencies, a lot of the hypocrisy of our government, the original stain of slavery, the lack of Reconstruction after the Civil War, and voter suppression. Sure, I can list for you a lot of the things that are wrong with this country.
So then why pretend it all started? So then why pretend all the problems in America started with President Trump? Is it because you have personal? No, Anthony. Is it because you hate him? You hate the president.
I absolutely do not hate the president. I actually used to like hanging out. This is not a personal thing for me.
But you've called him mad. You've called him racist. You said he stinks.
You're doing something very interesting now because you know you're a good interviewer. And I got the angle that you're going in, but what you're doing is you're overreading into the tweet. The tweet was a response to his tweet. Him and I are still attached to each other, whether we like it or not. Remember, negative attachments are still attachments.
Right.
So when he's saying nonsense like that,
Okay.
I'm offering a rebuttal, and like many people, I'm preaching to an audience of one. Now you're going to take that and you're going to step back from it and you're going to overly analyze it.
Well, I mean,
I'll
you know,
accept that our problems. Let me finish.
Okay,
I'll
sure.
accept that our problems in the United States started prior to him, but I know how to sting the SOB. I'm pretty good at it because it's 3.5 years later. He's still tweeting at me.
Okay, no, that's
Okay,
a
and
good
every
point.
time
Let's pick up on that.
Every time he tweets at me, it's another 50,000 Twitter followers for me. So
Let's pick up on that if you don't mind.
tweets.
You said you stayed loyal to him even after being fired. What was the turning point for you then? Why did you say, right, the gloves are off? And I think I've heard you use that phrase.
Well, I mean, listen, I stayed loyal to him, but I didn't like the child separation issue, the immigration at the border. I didn't like the disavowal of the intelligence agency. It's pretty honest. You could look at all that. I wrote an article in April of 2019 in the Hill magazine saying the press is not the enemy of the people. I mean, you're a rough interviewer, but you don't look like the enemy of the people to me. I think that we have the First Amendment and freedom of expression in the United States for a reason. It's to protect the democracy and to hold people in power in check. And it all offers our children the opportunity to express their creativity. Lots of economic innovation are born from the freedom of the press. So President didn't like that. He called me on Easter Sunday to give me the guff, and we sparred a little, but I was still with him. The turning point was when he went after the squad. He told the 4 congresswomen, 3 of which were born in the United States, one who was a naturalized citizen, all 4 democratically elected to our Congress, to go back to the countries that they originally came from.
Yeah.
That is a racist, nativist trope. And they told my Italian American grandmother that 100 years ago when she got to this country.
Right.
She produced 3 children, 2 of which served in the Second World War, 1 that was wounded on Normandy Beach. Should she have gone back to the country that
Well,
she originally
this is the interesting point, actually,
this
between
is
your...
nonsensical. So when I
Right.
rebuked him, he went at, let me finish because it's important.
So sorry.
When I rebuked him, he went after me. No problem. I'm a big boy. So I hit him back. I think I called him Fidel Adolf Trump because I had to get the fat shaming in there, the notorious FAT. So that flipped him out. And so he went after my wife. He attacked my wife from the presidential Twitter feed. She's a suburban housewife. He knows her and I were having marital problems as a direct result of me working for him. And that's a low blow. I don't like that. Do I look like Ted Cruz to you? I mean, we're just meeting each other for the first 15 minutes, but do I look like Ted Cruz?
No, you look like a very square-jawed Wall Street tough guy. Now, let me finish.
I'm not gonna take that from the president after I raised him tens of millions of dollars, gave him 7 figures plus personally.
Anthony, let me ask you about the Congresswoman.
And it's a free country still. It's still a free country. So yes, he's going to lose.
Anthony, let me ask you about the, can you still hear me? Anthony, let me ask you about the Congresswoman, because I know this is a point of principle for you. He made a remark that was completely beyond the pale in normal political discourse, but he would say that he was angry at them for criticizing American foreign policy, immigration policy, and even, in the case of AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, saying that capitalism itself was an irredeemable system. Now, you've worked within the system, as you just mentioned. Excuse me?
No, so then say that.
Okay, right. But what he's saying is that I'm not in any way
to go back to the country.
I understand. I understand. But my question at the end of all that was going to be to you. Clearly, you come from a patriotic family. Do you think that these congresswomen are right to criticize the United States to this degree on every single policy that I have just outlined?
Well, are they right? No, I disagree with them intellectually. I would like to debate them in the free marketplace of intellectual ideas. Do they have a standing to say what they're saying? They absolutely do. That's incorporated in the Constitution and the First Amendment. They can say all of the things
But you disagree with much of what they say, right?
I totally, wholly disagree with what they say. But actually my father too was in the U.S. Army. 3 of my family members fought for them to have the right to say what they are saying. And so to tell them to go back to the countries that they originally came from, first of all, he knows it's racist. I know it's racist. And secondarily, it's nativism, okay? And the country is not going to do well. You're talking about the foibles in the country and our shortcomings. We're not going to do well if we talk like that. It's
Okay,
like
so let's
it's like
say
if Louis Long had a baby with Charles Lindbergh, and the baby was raised by Roy Cohn and grew up to be Donald Trump. I mean, this is demagogic nonsense.
Okay, now you clearly are determined to make sure everyone has the right to say things, even if they are highly critical of America. That's the beauty of America. But that doesn't mean you have to support their party now in the election. You've just said you don't agree with what they say, and yet they are the young, up-and-coming generation of the Democratic Party.
Well, listen, I support the country and I support the system of government of this country. What I don't support is the abrogation of the institutions of the democracy. What I don't support is using the White House as a campaign husting. What I don't support is having U.S. Marines decorated in their official gear, opening doors for the American president. We know from George Washington that we were trying to avoid that in the 244-year experiment. So in my test of where I am, it's patriotism first, what is right and wrong, and it's partisan deep last. And now some of my buddies in the Republican Party have decided to allow the president to hijack the party, make it a party of one, make it Trumpism over Republicanism.
You say that.
Disavow the platform.
You say that, but amongst Republicans, President Trump's rating, according to Pew, is something in the region of 85 to 90% on average.
Well, Nate Silver at 538 has it at 73%. But remember, they've lost registration. The registration of the Republican Party as a factor of the electorate is only about 24% now. The largest voting bloc in the country is independent.
Let's look at Joe Biden's record. His own running mate, Kamala Harris, said during the debate that Joe Biden opposed busing of black children to white schools when she was a child, and that hurt her. She also complained that he had worked with segregationists. Well, you know, that's in Joe Biden's record, isn't it?
Well, I think if you were in the government for 47 years, you've worked with segregationists. I mean, remember what...
Okay, what about busing? What about busing?
Well, again, you're talking about a different time and place in America. If you went up to Boston, the white Irish were throwing rocks at the black kids in the buses. You're going to tell me that we haven't had racist undertones in our society? We obviously have. We're trying to fix it. We're trying to make it better.
Okay, was Joe Biden...
Has Joe Biden, in the quote-unquote 47 years, evolved? I think he has. He picked a Indian, African-American, a brilliant person to be his running mate. I think he's evolved.
Let me ask you, let me bring it up to date with Joe Biden's record, okay? Not that much up to date, but quite up to date. Well, hang on, 1994.
Some politicians, they're weather vanes, you know that.
Well, there you go. And it seems that you're willing to get behind one who's been there for 47 years. You're happy to get behind him.
I'm willing to get behind one that I know is not going to wreck the institutions of this democracy and the diffusion of power and the checks and balances and go after and subvert.
Okay, so he's happy to work. He's happy to work within it. But look what he does within it. Look at 1994. He brought in the Clinton crime bill. That was very unfair on many black people. We've heard it from African Americans ourselves on our own show. They hated that crime bill. He's got that on his record.
Yeah, I mean, I think it reflecting 25, 26 years later, he made a mistake. The Republicans...
He doesn't think so.
They wanted to... Let me finish. You asked me about the African Americans. I think they think he made a mistake. I think that was a mistake. In hindsight, the Iraq War was obviously a mistake. But the Republicans, let's go back to 1994. The Republicans wanted a rougher crime bill than the one that Joe Biden and President Clinton were proposing.
Oh, come on, so he wasn't a moderating force on that. He was delighted with the crime bill he brought in and determined to bring it in. And he said, I don't care what lack of opportunities they've had. If they're going to hit my old lady on the head with an iron pipe, I'm going to take them off the streets.
You're talking about 1994. You're trying to nail the guy. Of course, there's some bad stuff about Vice President Biden. You know, there's horrific stuff about the president in terms of the way he was discriminating against African Americans, him and Fred Trump, in their housing projects. And so, come on, we know that there are dark elements to the American story, but we're trying to make the American story better. Let's talk about 2020.
All right, let's talk about 2020. In 2020, Joe Biden says to a black interviewer, if you have a problem figuring out if you're for me or for Trump, then you ain't black. Now, isn't that Joe Biden and the Democrats taking the black vote for granted yet again?
It's a gaffe.
It's a gaffe.
He was trying. Yeah, he's got a heavy tongue at times, and he was trying to make a joke.
Okay.
And it looked like a lead balloon. That's a gaffe.
All right. Okay.
You're telling me the guy's a racist? You telling me Joe Biden's a racist?
Look at his record, and you decide for yourself. But let me tell you about
black Indian women to be the vice presidential candidates.
Well,
they just don't do that.
Anthony, let's just turn to Trump's record on the economy, because I know that that's what you want to nail him on, so to speak. Before the pandemic, the economy was growing, stock markets were at record levels, and unemployment was near record lows for every type of ethnicity. So do you really say it's his fault that you're in the position you are in now, or do you say it is the pandemic?
Well, it's both. I mean, the pandemic would have certainly slowed down the economy. Go look at the numbers in Asia, go look at the numbers in Europe where they handled the pandemic better. Those economies are already back up on the rise. We've got 31 million people unemployed in the United States. So you have to look at the totality of the president's decision making. And let me give you a little bit of inside knowledge. 2 cabinet members came to my office at Skybridge in October, no longer with the administration, and said to me, hey, the guy can't manage anything. He's not capable of managing. If we go through a crisis, it's going to be a disaster. I thought it was going to be the Soleimani strike. That seems like 100 years ago now. It's only 7 or 8 months ago. Thank God cooler heads prevailed in that. But the crisis was ultimately the pandemic. He's got everybody in the administration frozen. They're afraid to be fired. They're afraid to be humiliated on the presidential Twitter feed. There's no symphony or coordination of the executive branch. And they woefully mishandled the pandemic.
Well, look at the economy now, though.
Exacerbated the bone crushing of the economy.
Anthony, I know you're a numbers guy. You keep an eye on these things for a living, so you are really on top of this. But let me read it to you. Currently, U.S. stocks are once again at record highs. Jobs are coming back. 1.8 million in July, 4.8 million in June. And of all the G7 countries, the U.S. has contracted the least, except for Japan. I mean, look at the United Kingdom over that 3-quarter period. Minus 20%, United States down 9.5%. You're not going to give him credit for that?
Actually, I'm not going to give him credit for that any more than he would have given Barack Obama credit for a lot of the things that happened as a result of the Federal Reserve monetary policy during the Obama administration. You know, Jerome Powell, who he dislikes and was tweeting against 6 short months ago, has done a masterful job of handling the crisis. But you're leaving out a lot of stuff in those facts and figures. 13% unemployment now for the African-American community. Wages for the bottom 20% of the country down 9%. The restaurant industry is completely wiped out. And small stores, mom and pop stores on local main streets in the United States, 60% of them may never open again. Okay, if he had handled this better and we got out of it the way you guys did in Europe or the way they got out of it in Asia, those mom and pop stores would have reopened. You're talking about the stock market. There are 5 stocks in the stock market now that make up 27% of the market capitalization of the S&P 500. This is the greatest wealth transfer in human history from mom and pop stores to 5 tech conglomerates.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead to a long-term catastrophe.
That is a fascinating point. And that is a program in itself, and we will pick up on that one day. A final question for you, Anthony. What is your prediction for the fight, I almost said? What is your prediction for the election in November?
We have a willing coalition of Republicans that are teaming up with a wonderfully colorful mosaic of Americans to oust him so that we can preserve the principles of our democracy. So, no, he's going to lose. It's going to be tight for a little while, but then it's going to go like the Carter-Reagan election. It's going to be a landslide defeat.
And he would point to the Rasmussen poll, which gives him 51% approval rating around the country. But of course, there's a lot of time between now and then.
I hear you, but you got to look at the gender gap. Remember, these people in this country, they vote on sentiment and feeling. And the guy's been a disaster. And his Twitter feed,
that's one last really good point.
Has hurt him.
The enthusiasm for Joe Biden is lacking, isn't it?
I actually don't think so. I actually think the Hillary Clinton of this race is Donald Trump. The enthusiasm for Donald Trump was good last time in certain areas, but there was a lot of anti-Hillary sentiment. And so what's happening now, he's the Hillary Clinton of 2020, Donald Trump. People hate the guy. And so they're going to go out and vote against him. Like I said, it could be the Diet Coke can that's sitting in front of me. They'd vote the Diet Coke can into the office of the presidency versus this guy. So no, it doesn't matter. Remember, this is a feeling. I would like to tell you that this is a hiring process in the United States. It is not. It is a popularity contest. Yeah. And this is a feeling for people. And this guy has done a miserable job. He's failed in the pandemic, destroyed the economy. He's a bellicose bully, and he's going. And by the way, I'm going to spend the next 69 days making sure that happens.
Anthony Scaramucci, on that note, we shall leave it. Thank you so much for your contributions to the Nexus. I hope to see you again in the near future, perhaps around the election time.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you at home for watching. Remember, you can see this and all our previous episodes on our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.